Hello and welcome to this special edition of Optimize et al. My name is Bettool Jabur, and joining me and co-hosting with me today is Prateek Chitnis. Hi, Prateek.
Hey, Bettool.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And Prateek, you need to introduce our guest today because he's remarkable. Go on, go for it.
Yeah. So you guys must have heard of Naviate Cloud Manager. So we have a champion with us who's used Naviate Cloud Manager and has given us a lot of good feedback. So without further ado, I'll let Robert introduce himself and give us a little bit about him, information about himself, what got him into technology, and we'll go from there.
Good morning, Prateek and Bettool. I am not that amazing, but thank you.
How humble. Oh.
Well, if I was so amazing, I probably wouldn't need Cloud Manager, but no. I'll talk about that later. My name is Robert Deardorff, BIM manager and associate at a company called VAA. We're located in Plymouth, Minnesota. BIM manager we have about 130 Revit users, BIM Revit users. I'm using BIM 360 ACC, focusing mostly in Revit, with I'd say architectural, electrical, mechanical, structural engineering, and then also a general arrangement, which is kind of like a food process-oriented design group.
So you're working in a multidisciplinary team, right? How do you like, just to jump into things here, how do you kind of go in the morning into work and think, right, okay, today I'm going to focus on architecture, I'm going to focus on MEP team? What do you have such a thing?
I am lucky to have somebody who reports to me who he has taken my role of having to dive deep into a specific discipline, but it's something more that's reactionary. Unless we have something planned, if a group is having an issue, that's when I know. I'm not always planning ahead for it. It's just kind of sometimes happens, but nope. Yeah. I mean, you have to, with multidiscipline, you have to be willing to dive into any group at any time. And, you can't do something for a group if you don't understand their workflow. So yeah, you have to get involved.
Yeah, I do have a question regarding that, because some or a lot of our users are BIM managers or, aspiring BIM managers. So if you can give us a little bit about, what it means to be a BIM manager, maybe a little bit of your day.
What made you, Robert, basically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the number one, at least for me, the number one aspect of BIM management is being helpful. I mean, I am a problem solver, something that I would say my wife doesn't appreciate, but you got to know when to use the problem solving skills. And a BIM manager's role, that is probably the number one, role. So when people come with a problem, it's always fun. It's always like time to solve this problem and hopefully build something better as the outcome. I mean, typical day for me is, log in early, expect lots of random communications. I probably speak with, out of our 130 users, at least 20 different people per day. We get pulled into, I'd say, 15 different projects per week. So there's a lot of moving around.
Is that not overwhelming though? Do you not think, it builds you as a character, but is it not overwhelming how you have to be involved and understand the different projects? Because I'm assuming these are projects of different scales as well.
Oh yeah, they are. I'd say, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the type of person you are will help or hurt in that respect. For me, given what we'll talk about later with ADHD, it's actually quite easy for me to hop around because that's how my brain works. For other people who are more focus oriented, obviously that would be more difficult. But that's why they make those people with a normal brain chemistry will do much better on just straight focusing on a project.
Yeah,
that's an interesting thought, right? You're saying that something that the world usually looks at as a negative thing, you're telling people that, hey, as a BIM manager, that can actually be really helpful because I can jump from project to project and not feel overwhelmed because, that's how I am naturally as a person.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of go into BIM management and how I kind of came into this. So growing up as a kid, I had a really hard time in school. I would do really well on tests, but I could not finish homework. And as soon as I was at home, it was not school related. I didn't want to focus on school. And I went through up until I was 29 or 30 with this sort of problem of having a really hard time focusing on boring, menial kind of tasks. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I was finally, my wife actually was pretty upset with me for leaving stuff around the kitchen and just kind of being aloof. And finally did some research and took a test and realized, wow, I have a lot of ADHD symptoms. I went to the doctor. Doctor's like, oh yeah, you clearly have ADHD. Let's talk about, mental practice and maybe some meds. And once I was on the right meds, life completely changed. But that the workarounds that my brain built to kind of help protect me from being stressed out all the time are what led me to what I do now. Because without knowing it, I would always look for tools to help me get around those boring menial tasks. Anytime something would pop up back in CAD, repetitive tasks that this doesn't take brain power. This is just manual labor. I would try to figure out a way to build maybe a macro or, take a process and just make it more streamlined. And then that would obviously look really good for me on my reviews. My coworkers would notice, wow, he's done already. How do you finish? So they start asking questions. And all of a sudden they would be, adopting those processes and enjoying them. So that ultimately led me to become a BIM manager because people are always coming to me anyway. And so, the reason I bring up ADD or ADHD in this case as a good fit for BIM management and hopping around is the doctor who diagnosed me. He was very clear to tell me that, don't look at this as some mental defect. It is maybe something is definitely wrong internally in terms of the brain chemistry, but it's not necessarily negative. The best emergency room workers have ADHD because they can go from one thing to another and focus heavily on this thing and not let the rest of the things going on around them affect their concentration because they're
absolutely.
Yeah.
Taking that negative aspect and turning it into that positivity and utilizing it, that's your skills. We can, like you say, the emergency room doctors, etc., that they are able to focus on it because they found what they're very good at. And so they can utilize it. And you've done the same within our industry, which I think it's incredible. And I think that's what really, from our first introduction, Robert, when you mentioned about this to me, I just thought, wow, great, because there's a lot of people out there who are listening to this podcast who are going through the same thing, but they haven't quite pinpointed what it is or don't feel strong enough to go and ask for help, or don't have the wife like you do to say, look, there's something going on here, to be open about it and to talk about it. It's quite difficult to kind of pinpoint something like that and work on it from a positive way. As humans, we might focus on the negative a bit more, but you've changed that incredibly in your life. And it's not been, not when you're 10 years old or anything. It's later on in life that you discovered it and made the most out of it. And now you really enjoy your job as well in terms of what you're doing. It gives you that ability to kind of concentrate on what you need to do, which is really great. And I think it's a really great childhood story. It's something we can all reflect on, all of us, because, we do get bored sometimes with some of the tasks. Or if you think about it, some of those homeworks or even some assignments like we might have to do now, we might just kind of postpone and leave till the end because not that we're not really interested in it, but do I really have to do that task? There's something in everyone that kind of pushes you to kind of delay a task, to delay something. But it could be, the focusing thing. It could be the interest thing. It could be just something like that, I would say.
Yeah, because it's hard to differentiate between procrastination and then actually getting diagnosed, right? So it's important.
Exactly.
If you do feel a certain way, and then like Robert, you try to understand, oh, okay, what's going on here, and it's not just you procrastinating and then it's actually ADHD or some other thing, it's good to get diagnosed. At least you know what's going on and you don't feel like, oh, what's wrong with me or, right.
Yeah, for sure. When, going through high school, like I tested in, when I came to high school, I came from a private Lutheran school and the education was much better there. Coming into a public high school, I tested into, junior level AP courses. Of course, my knowledge was good, but again, the ability to do the homework was not, and it was very important in those classes. So I was getting, C's and D's, and that really affected me, especially with my father and my grandfather are both structural engineers. So they're very smart. And they had expectations, and I felt bad. So, once I was diagnosed and started reading about what ADHD is and ADD and similarly, how it affects the brain and what your brain is looking for, it made a lot more sense. It wasn't, I'm just a loser, I can't do my homework because I'm lazy. I mean, I'm not saying that wasn't part of it. I'm sure there was some of that there. I mean, I am human, but also knowing that the brain is looking to be, excited about something. Stimulated is the right word there. It wants to be stimulated, and it's going to find stimulation. And if it's not in what you're doing, it's going to find something else to do, and you'll just move on. It won't even let you. It'll feel physically uncomfortable to sit there and focus.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And that kind of then led you to, I mean, you say that's what makes you a great BIM manager now, that led you to then become that tech savvy. You can concentrate on the problems within technology and finding solutions. You say about being, a solution finder. Coming up next on Optimize et al.
I won't say it's basic, but we do commercial, government buildings, and I mean a lot of normal buildings, but one of our some of our specialties are grain handling. So that's the general arrangement discipline of our company, which is essentially it's kind of like a mixture of food processing sort of and mechanical. It's just essentially the design of product flow from we do a lot of rail work, so it could be from a rail to storage or to processing to storage, and then to offloading, might be back into trains, might be into trucks, or even we do ships. Like port facilities. So and it can be grain, it can be flour. Happy coworker.
Happy coworker.
There's a window right here, so I get to see everybody.
That's perfect.
Yeah, in fact, the guy that just walked by talking about really cool technology is in the middle of implementing a new software for us that does like realistic physics simulation of grain running through spouts.
Wow.
And so they can optimize the flow of the grain without damaging the grain. It's pretty awesome, and it's ridiculous how long the software takes. His computer looks amazing because it's one of those, it's a really high-end Alienware, so everybody walks by his desk and like, do you really need that? And he's like, yes, I do. I'm simulating grain right now.
One of the terms that I kept hearing since we got out of the pandemic was technology fatigue. Have you noticed any of that fatigue amongst your users? And have they ever told you, hey, Robert, you're giving me 15 add-ons, or maybe, you're happy you're using them, right? But is there someone else who's like, Robert, this is just too much. We're tired of using so many different add-ons.
Actually, it's that you have to kind of look at who needs what and make sure they have what they need. But also, and something that we haven't done as well as we could have is training the add-ons. That's actually, like, this year we're starting a training initiative, and one part of that is bringing people up to speed on all the different add-ons that we have, not just so that they know what's available to them, but then how to use each one and how we, VAA would like them to use it.
Sometimes, and again, this is a different type of learner, different type of personality. When seeing so much on one page, you just can't concentrate on anything. You just can't read, you can't draw, you can't focus, So again, I suppose it's if you need 15 different plugins, how do you then approach a user who cannot have 15 different plugins on their screen, you know. And like you say, you kind of take it back and you learn knowing who needs to have the 15 and who just needs to have 2 of them.